everything that they tried to do, they were unsuccessful doing. And that's why that offense was out there. I don't think the plan was to leave Mac Jones out there, Tommy Curran, for 3 or 4 series, but they kept trying to get something positive going. And if you're looking for a feel-good Friday night, go to Lansdowne Street, go to the theater district, because it was not happening watching this football game.
It was not in front of your television. And I think that's what's the most troubling thing. When you look at the whole entirety of their trip to Vegas, you had a bad practice on Tuesday, you had a positive practice on Wednesday, and then tonight the starters get out there and they tried to wring from that some positivity. They got nothing in the running game. They had a skittish-looking Mac Jones at times who threw a horrible pick.
Yeah.
And then defensively they got rolled over a bit by the twos for the Las Vegas Raiders. So to me, really nothing comes from this game that's good except for the simple fact that, well, at least they got 16 days before the opener to get it right.
And that's not even that good. And that's not good news either.
That makes me a little bit worried.
'Cause I was joking with Phil Perry last night. I said, if you were commissioner for a day, would you add another week before the season started? Start this thing on September 18th. He said, that sounds about right, another week. I don't think, even with 16 days, Tom, they're not ready to start the season. They're not ready for a real NFL season. They just don't have it all. And you can see it. You can see the frustration. You can see these guys who they wanted something positive to happen, the starters, on offense and defense. We talked a lot about the offense, but the defense was not great tonight either. They wanted something positive to happen. It just didn't materialize.
And speaking of those frustrations, let's take a look at these tweets that Phil Perry sent out during the game. A lot of frustration on the sidelines. Mac Jones frustrated, understandably so. 3 series in, not much to show for it. Gets his seat and slams his tablet behind the bench. Let's take a look at this next one. Mac Jones pacing the sideline briefly here, chucked his play-calling wristband on the ground. Once he got back to his seat, someone grabbed it, and he has it back on now. We talked about Mac Jones briefly, Tom Curran, and how he looked in this game. Threw an interception, which I thought was pretty much a gift. That wasn't really an interception.
Right.
He threw that to the opposing team, but then also getting sacked in this game as well. What did you make of Mac Jones' performance and how he looked in this offense?
I think what's most disconcerting is we understand how good he played last year. He had a Pro Bowl season as a rookie, and now the fear is a regression. And again, 3 preseason games, you can't say it's a full-on regression, but his inability to seemingly have comfort. He kind of walked into that sack a little bit. I understood why he did that. He tried to squirrel outside and find an alley to throw to Devontae Parker. Same thing there a little bit, moved outside, got his feet set, and then said in the internal clock, I got to get rid of the ball, throws it directly into a team meeting, squirrely. To me, it's disconcerting to see that the offensive line hasn't rewarded him with a level of trust where he feels as if he can plant his feet, go through his progressions, and make a throw.
Comes back to the offensive line. I talked to Amina about this earlier today. On one hand, a lot of teams talk about this. Like 80% of NFL teams say, we could really use another offensive lineman. Our offensive line is not what it needs to be. But with the Patriots, what's so disturbing is that they had a good offensive line last year. And for Mac Jones, forget about the change of offense. Last year, offensive line, he could trust them. He could just sit back. He could survey the field. He could do his thing. We all talked about what an asset his mind is. And now he can't even do that. I don't think he has trust. And it's not personal. It is just the facts. The line is not holding up. And so that's what I was watching tonight, even on the throws that he completed. He threw a pass to Jacoby Myers in traffic. Myers caught it. He didn't have a lot of time on that. That was on a completion. Like, it's probably his best throw of the night was his first one, Devontae Parker.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. And then down here from there.
And I think that's, too, Amina, when you think about all of these issues that seem to be self-made by the Patriots. We're going to talk, I'm sure, during this program about Matt Patricia and Joe Judge and the people who are supposed to be his caddies on the sidelines. But when we look at the offensive line, when we look at the coaching decisions, when we look at Shaq Mason not being with the New England Patriots now and the decisions that they've made, they are made by Bill Belichick, and they're not putting people in a position to necessarily succeed. They're putting them into adverse situations, whether it be the offensive line or the coaching staff, that set them up to be less than. And that, to me, is what's distressing. And again, it's a preseason game. You have plenty of time to try. Well.
Well. No, you don't.
You see on the plenty there, Hercules. You've got time to try and get things rectified. But a lot of these issues, as Michael points out, are self-made. It was a good offensive line last year to a large extent.
Holley, Tom Curran bringing up play calling, I think that's interesting because that's obviously been a big topic of conversation when you look at the Patriots offense. How much of their struggles has to do with the play calling versus the execution of the personnel out there on the field?
Yeah, I don't think it's all play calling. Okay, some of it is. For example, I'd say, can I just recommend, lose a stretch run. Lose it. You can't do it. Okay, other teams can do it. The Patriots try to run outside. It is not effective. Inside runs, they look great. They did last year. They did it well. Ramondre Stevenson, when Harris is back out there, they'll be able to run effectively inside. So that's a play calling issue. But the offensive line, if you look at some of these guys, I've said it over and over, if you look at Trent Brown and you look at Owinu and you look at David Andrews, these are good offensive linemen. It's kind of head-scratching to see what they're doing. Now, you could tweak it a little bit, Tom. I don't know if you agree with this. What I would do, if I'm not going to make a drastic trade, I would flip Isaiah Wynn inside. I'm going to make him a guard. I'm going to make Owinu a right tackle, and I'm going to keep Trent Brown on the left side. That helps personnel-wise a little bit because Isaiah Wynn on the right side tonight, he didn't look great. He got overwhelmed on a couple of plays. And you know what? And they're not going to do this, but I would. Just make a full-time offensive line coach. Stop dancing around. Just your offensive line is struggling now. You need as many eyes as you can, devoted eyes on the offensive line, not, hey, I'm the offensive line coach and I'm sort of the play caller as well. That's not going to work.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the decisions that they made.
Yep.
You have an offensive line coach in Matt Patricia who's never really coached the offensive line as a dedicated offensive line coach, splitting time. Mentioned this in the pregame show. You have probably 5 guys trying to do the jobs of 8 people. And some of these guys who are trying to do these jobs have not done those jobs previously. Additionally, the jobs they're trying to do, you just got a new manual on how to do it. I mean, we say, Michael makes mention of, okay, just scrap the stretch run. Well, they've been doing it since minicamp.
Yeah,
They've installed an entirely new offense based on that. That stretch run, it's not just a portion of the offense, it's predicating your offense on the ability to run the stretch and then throw passes off of it. And here's this first stretch run. You can see the guys,
nice.
The offensive line
-4.
moving, and you've lost the edge. You see it again. They're trying to get to the edge. They don't get it. There's an offensive hold on this play. You can just watch the offensive line if you're wondering what a stretch is. They're trying to create flow, going to the right sideline, and then a hole where you're able to put your foot in the ground and cut upfield. There are no holes. The flow is just a massive humanity trying to get on a subway with its doors closing.
And we've yeah, you're right. You're right. And you mentioned, you got 5 people trying to do the job of 8. That's like all of our first jobs, right? You understand. But you're talking about the NFL. You're talking about a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You should be able to figure it out. You should be able to hire, you got 8 slots. You should be able to hire 8 people for those positions. But we've talked about the offensive line and the stretch and the coaching. We haven't mentioned Cole Strange. So that's part of it, too. I'm like, this offensive line was good last year. So Cole Strange, your first-round pick, and we just get so used to the Patriots having these solid, plug-and-play first-round picks. Well, used to. Not so much anymore. But Cole Strange was supposed to be that. And I said, they're not ready to play? He's not ready to play.
You think so?
I think so.
So, Tom, is it the inexperience?
I don't think he is playing well. I do not think
he is. And is it just because this is his rookie year, or is it just because maybe trying to figure out the system?
Well, we've seen it before. We've seen, I don't know, it could be a combination of those things. We've seen rookies, whether they're highly drafted rookies like Logan Mankins or guys who are undrafted free agents, or look, Michael Owinu was not a first-round pick, but Shaq Mason, you mentioned him. When he came in, immediately was able to play. Marcus Cannon was like a 5th-round pick. Took him a couple of years, figured it out. Cole, I don't think it's a draft thing. He looks totally out of place. He looks overmatched to me.
I'm not seeing that from him.
No?
No.
Wow.
I'm seeing it from Haran.
Well,
I'm seeing it at times.
Well, you expect to see it from Haran.
I'm seeing it from Wynn, even though the sack early on was not really on Wynn. I think that Mac Jones wandered into it a little bit. But I'm not seeing it from – but it's a group.
Has he impressed you? Yeah,
He's been the least of my concerns among the group. I think that David Andrews at times has been, as big an issue or a bigger issue at times. And a lot of this is, again, goes back to communication. Phil Perry did an excellent job today talking about the communication issue. And that David Andrews is the one who really is in charge of making sure that all the line calls get in, and he missed a significant portion of the offseason. But again, we're talking about it's tempest in a teapot things when there's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, whatever analogy you want to use. These are decisions the New England Patriots made themselves to go ahead and march forward with an offensive scheme change without the coaches to implement it in the wake of one of the best offensive coordinators of this century having gone elsewhere. And they asked for this themselves. And Bill Belichick asked for it himself. I don't know if it was cavalier. I don't know if it was naive. I don't know if it's inspired, and we can't tell yet. But something has to give for this team, or there has to be progress made, Amina. Otherwise, you're going to have guys who are throwing their wristbands and their tablets and their helmets and whatever else to register that this ain't working, boss.
And, what's so crazy about this is the way we're talking about it now, and rightfully so, the offense has struggled so much that if they beat the Miami Dolphins on September 11th, people around here will respond as if they beat the 72 Dolphins,
Right.
And the Dolphins are not great.
Yeah.
I don't think they're great. I mean, they're fine. They improved. They got a rookie head coach, and they've got a young quarterback who still needs to prove himself. But that's how depressing the Patriots' performance has been. You mentioned inspired. That's how uninspired they played throughout the preseason, not only in the games, but in practices too. And the last thing I'll say, Tom and Amina, look, I went to visit my cousin in 2017, lives in Cleveland, big-time Browns fan. Now, I went to visit him in the summer of 2017. He said, oh, wow, the Browns are doing great this year. It was August, okay? They were undefeated.
You never say it in August.
Okay,
Don't
they
say
were
it in August.
undefeated in the preseason. They were
Right.
undefeated in the preseason because teams can generally do that. They can manipulate it. They can manipulate great moments. It's totally fake. But in the preseason, most of the time, if you want it to look good, you can make it look good. As 2017 Browns finished 0-16. So the frightening thing is the Patriots wanted to make it look good tonight. They wanted to manipulate it, and they couldn't in the preseason. That's shocking.
And that was one thing that stood out to me was the fact that the Raiders, they look so much more cohesive out there on the field. And, Tom, I don't know if that's because Josh McDaniels is on the other side and he knows his Patriots team so well, or if the Patriots just didn't look good at all. Like, I couldn't tell if the cohesiveness and the, just everything that was happening with the Raiders team, why they looked so much better than this Patriots team. I didn't know if it had more to do with Josh McDaniels or the Patriots themselves.
I think it has to do with the Patriots. I think all of it is a root cause.
Right.
And again, it's a little arresting to see that it's second teamers at times that the Patriots starters were going against as the Patriots starters. And I thank God they left them out there as long as they did. At least they didn't say, well, we got nothing out of it. But they stayed out there. But they're going against some of the Raiders' backups on both sides of the ball. And Las Vegas is having its way. But I think it's all traceable to what we've seen throughout this training camp. I mean, it's not as if we didn't see it myriad times at Foxborough on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays when the team would flounder offensively against its own defense. And it happened again during both of these preseason games. 2 3-and-outs last week against Carolina, and then a productive third drive. They have one positive drive in 3 preseason games for their starting offense.
Wow.
And they've had myriad forgettable practices by their offense. So I don't know where they're going to pluck this miraculous turnaround from.
Yeah.
But God bless you. You could do a read. I'm still trying to get
It's not what you want to hear 16 days away from week 1.